everyone, I'm Stephanie with Staff Base Academy. How can we get a bigger budget and more resources for our internal comms efforts? A lot of communicators are asking this question. Communications can be harder to measure than a lot of other things in business, so comms professionals often feel like we're fighting an uphill battle to get the resources we need to do our job. We'd like to help you take a step back and think about the bigger picture. To do that, you need to think about your focus and role as a communicator and your sources of influence. If we get this right, the budget discussion will be much easier. In this video, you will learn how to find and focus on the right role for you and your team, increase your internal influence, even if you're new to the role or the company, and get the right resources and authority for your communications agenda. Let's start with an easy model to help you visualize how your communications role and responsibilities connect to your resources and influence in the organization.
The first thing to understand is your role. This means defining what employee communication actually means for your organization and having a clear focus on what you want it to be in the future. This role and the results you generate pay into your internal influence. There are also other factors that determine your influence. You should be aware of them and let them grow. Your influence is your bargaining ground and what moves the needle for your budget discussions. And finally, more resources in turn help you succeed in your role, increase your influence, and you get the point.
So, how do you aspire to play the role of employee communication in your organization? Here is an easy model that we like from communications experts Sue Dewhurst and Liam Fitzpatrick that helps address this question.
All communicators are content producers. Skilled and creative content production is the basis of communications work and all other roles that we will discuss here. The next level is to create campaigns and messages with a clear expectation of the actions you hope to motivate. If you achieve that and find a way to measure the change, you are driving behavior. The next level is to anticipate the communication needs of a team or of leaders and help them to communicate to get results. The larger and more distributed an organization is, the more value there is in delegating rather than doing everything yourself. Finally, more companies regard their own culture as a real asset. Communication plays a key part in building and developing culture, and thus helps to build a strategic asset of their business. With more strategic impact, it gets more difficult to judge and measure results of communication efforts. However, the value of this model is to introduce the idea to your team and your leaders that communications can be much more than just producing content.
Keep in mind that these 4 value areas are not mutually exclusive. The point is to decide to what degree they matter to your organization and build your employee communication role accordingly.
With a better understanding of your role, it's time to look at your sources of influence. The better you know and develop them, the more will come back to you.
The influence discussion matters because communication roles don't usually come with a lot of power. This makes the expertise and relationships of your communications team even more important.
Let's have a look at the more personal sources of influence. Skills like concise writing, video production, or creating powerful messages. Knowledge about the company, the business model, and especially your internal audience. As stated before, communications should be the go-to team for anyone who wants to have more insight about what employees think on a particular topic. There are few other roles in the company that are so broad by definition. Use that to your advantage. Get out of the office, get talking, and build your internal network. Become a trusted advisor to your leadership by being reliable, honest, and knowledgeable. The higher people get in an organization, the more they rely on a rather small group of people to give feedback and help them understand what's going on in the office.
There are other influence factors that might be harder to manage.
Past outcomes will definitely pay into your influence, if they have been good. Keep in mind that stakeholders will look at communications based on the role it has played in the past. A crisis situation, either immediate like a severe weather event or a long-term crisis like COVID, will always put the spotlight on internal comms and increase the influence. The same is true for major change programs, if communications is seen as a trusted partner and involved early in the transition.
And finally, there are also very tangible sources of influence that every communications team should have on the radar.
A communications strategy is a great help for your influence. It clearly shows others your plans and makes them easy to understand. And most importantly, it shows that you are willing to align your goals with what the business cares about. Owning the keys to effective internal communications channels is a great source of influence. Don't leave it to others to decide what you need here. Outside of comms, it might seem like enough to send emails or post something on a SharePoint site. But communicators know that they need one place to plan, create, manage, and measure their work. So even if you're not a technical person, make the effort and get a thorough understanding of your needs and options here.
These 8 sources of influence are not a complete list, but they make up a good part of what should be on your personal and team development priority list. Keep in mind you can combine these topics to make an even greater impact. Here is an example.
Imagine you can define the top communication initiatives and goals with your senior leadership at the beginning of the year and build a campaign strategy and engaging content to keep these key topics top of mind for employees. Then, you can come back to your stakeholders with a campaign results overview with output, outcome, and deep audience insights in one place. That's a great way to build influence and confidence in your work. So now you understand your role, and you know how to grow your internal influence. Now we're in a much better position to ask for the resources you need.
Getting resources for internal communications doesn't just mean asking senior leadership for a bigger budget or additional members for your comms team.
Yes, that's important too. But for many of the comms professionals we work with, it's also important to get the trust and authority to make their own decisions and not have to get every piece of content approved by senior leadership. Senior leaders also need to understand that they need to be communicators themselves. There is no way to delegate this 100% to a comms team. But there are also other people and teams with which you can build a relationship and get access to resources. For instance, local line managers, like plant managers or business unit leads, to build up a local network of communication champions. IT, to support with planning, implementing, and supporting IC channels. HR, to think more holistically about employee services and the employee experience in order to enrich IC channels. And marketing and external comms to ensure a close alignment of content and topics.
It's a big advantage in these discussions with stakeholders to know your focus and role and where your influence is coming from. Communications has something to offer for all of these stakeholders. Now, this approach might pull you out of your comfort zone, but it's so rewarding, and it might even give you more motivation to succeed. So let's sum things up here. We talked about how to find and focus on the right role for you and your team, how to increase your internal influence on a personal and tangible level, and how to get the resources and authority for your communications agenda from different stakeholders. We hope this was helpful to better prepare you for your internal budget and resource discussions, and to help you think about your focus and role as an internal communicator. We hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out our other videos in this series. See you next time.